Hello there, my loves. It's time for another book review. So, as you've probably already seen from the thumbnail, today we're tackling this little beauty, The Soul of the Robot by Barrington J. Bayley. Okay, so as ever, I'll be popping up the cover here. This will be the scan of this particular copy. There's been a few other covers in the past, so I'll probably pop them up too. Anyway, okay, so this particular copy I got on one of my vintage science fiction book hauls. It was recommended to me by a Mr. P.W. Miles in the comment section. So thank you very much for that recommendation. I really enjoyed it. So what we're going to do first is just talk a little bit about this particular copy, because I always like to talk about the ones I own. And this one is a particular beauty. As you can probably see here, we've got a nice stained yellow outside of the book, which complements really nicely with the blue and yellow typography on the back and on the front. This cover, I was researching just earlier, and the original art for this went up for auction in 2020. I don't know what it sold for. They didn't say, but that was quite an interesting coincidence. Probably went for quite a sum, I imagine. But there we are. This copy is from 1974. Yes. No, it isn't. No, that's when it was originally released. This is a 1978 edition. I smelt it last time, did a sniff last time. Let's do it again. Oh, yeah, it's wood. The old family favourite, wood. But there's something I didn't pick up last time. There's definitely some old tobacco mixed in there, which is a common occurrence with these old books, and much appreciated because I'm an ex-smoker. But there we are. Okay, right. So the other thing that I found interesting about this copy is that at the beginning there's a dedication to Michael Moorcock, the Eternal Champion. There we are, referencing his Elric novels, I think. I was looking earlier, and it appears that these authors weren't only contemporaries of one another, but they were good friends, and I think they collaborated on a number of short stories and magazines. Short stories for magazines, it would appear. The two were also friends with J.G. Ballard, and apparently they used to meet regularly and discuss science fiction at the time. Apparently, according to Wikipedia, my research hasn't dived too far past Wikipedia. Apparently these three it suggests that they were instrumental in the development of the new wave in science fiction during the 70s. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not. This is Wikipedia, of course. But those three great minds together could do a fair bit of damage in that regard. Damage? But in any case, prior to this book, I'd never heard of Barrington J. Bayley at all. Apparently as well, he goes by a number of other pseudonyms, but I didn't recognise any of those either. So yeah, that's another advantage of plumbing the depths of these old books, the ones that have gone out of print, to discover these hidden gems. So let's talk a little bit about what the story's about in a nutshell, so to speak. There will be a spoiler near the end because it bears heavily on what I finally gave this book as a rating. But we'll get to that later. You can skip that bit. I'll give you a nice dollop of warning. So the whole thing, as you can imagine, focuses on a robot, a robot by the name of Jasper Rhodus, a very interesting name indeed. In fact, a lot of the names that are used in this book are very odd sounding names. There's probably a reason for that, being set as it is in a post-apocalyptic world, but we'll come to that a bit later. So Jasper Rhodus awakes at the very beginning, so the first page. He's kind of coming awake, and he does so in total darkness. It turns out actually that he's in a cupboard, so I'm not quite sure why he's come awake in a cupboard, but there we are. He opens the door and he's confronted by an old couple, a man and a woman, who are responsible for creating this robot. And so they've created him hopefully as the son that they were never able to have. Unfortunately for this old couple, Jasperodus has other ideas and very quickly runs out of the house and is gone. Laughing all the way. I don't know how you say that. Manichael. Yeah, you get the idea. Yeah, it's the poor couple. I felt sorry for them at the beginning, but this is only the first couple of pages, and he's off on his adventures. Now, Jasperodus's preoccupation throughout this book is questioning whether he's self-aware or not, whether he's conscious, and so all of his exploits from this point on, which covers a period of around 20 years or so, is about trying to prove to himself more than to other people that he's actually self-aware and that he's just as human as flesh and blood humans. So this, as I've said earlier, is set within a post-apocalyptic world. So it's Earth, but in the distant past, technology arose to the point where, of course, we've got robots. We've also got colonies on the moon and on Mars and on the satellites of Jupiter. So a very advanced civilization indeed. Now, at some point in the past, there's been a war, it would seem, some cataclysm that's caused everything to revert back. So where Jasperodus begins his adventures, it's more or less like a medieval feudal system. He encounters a kingdom and a king who he, at the very beginning, usurps. So Jasperodus becomes the king of this little kingdom. So I really liked that juxtaposition of the medieval or this primitive setting, but also Jasperodus being this robot that everyone actually acknowledges as a robot. So robots within this post-apocalyptic scenario still exist. There's a lot of them gambling around, as well as some other pieces of high technology that remain due to the fact that they can still be used or whatever. So Jasperodus isn't quite as strange within this setting as I imagined he would be. I thought maybe they would consider him a god or something like that. It's nothing like that. They know he's a robot. But what they don't realise is he is very, very intelligent, and by all accounts appears to be just as intelligent as humans, and even could pass as a human himself. So the question of whether he's self-aware or not, I would have thought from the beginning would be, quite a positive yes. But throughout his encounters with other humans suggests that no robots could ever be self-aware. They could never be conscious in the way humans are conscious. So a lot of the questions that are posed throughout this book are quite interesting philosophical conundrums in various ways. So Jasperodus, a couple of different points in the book, has his sensory apparatus upgraded so that he can come closer to experiencing the reality in the same ways as humans would. That being increasing his olfactory senses, his ability to sense smell, and even the acquisition of a working penis later on so that he can have congress with women. It's very, very odd. I wasn't expecting that little bit to come into the fray, but it did. But luckily it didn't describe in too much detail what went on. But in any case, he was having relationships with women. Relationships may be stretching it a bit too far, just going through the mechanics of copulation, shall we say. But anyway, yeah, so it's a wonderful adventure following Jasperodus as he goes along and constantly being knocked back in terms of other people's acceptance of his consciousness, shall we say. But due to his amazing intellect, his strength, he's able to rise to quite high positions. So at the very beginning, he becomes king of that small kingdom. But it's not enough for him. He's always trying to get higher. And so when he's king of this small kingdom, some travelling entertainers come, and they use this old holographic technology to show clips of the world before the cataclysm. And so it shows the pinnacle of human achievement prior to this point. And Jasper Rhodus becomes very excited at the prospect of getting this back again. So he travels to the Far East, wherever this is. It never mentions where it is exactly. Where there's an empire that's trying to emulate the work of the elder, ancient, intelligent civilization that preceded them. So then it's about Jasper Rhodus working with, dealing with this scenario. Lots of very interesting things happen to him, and I found it a really a fun adventure. It was a bit of a page turner in that regard. It was, of course, a bit aged in some ways, I suppose. I mean, this came out in the early 70s, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. At this point, this is where we get to spoiler territory. So if you've got to this point and you just want to see the rating that I'm going to give it, please zip ahead a little bit. But yeah, so the fly in the ointment for me was at the very end. As you can maybe imagine, Jasper Rhodus eventually decides to go back home to meet his makers, because he's met lots of people along the way, including the robotician in highest regard, the master robotician, who told him to his face that there's no way you're conscious. So Jasper Rhodus at this point has become suicidal. So he's planning on killing himself. So he thinks, right, for the last thing I'm going to do is go to see my parents and ask them why they've created me to suffer through this life, suffering, thinking that he's conscious, but he isn't. Well, what he discovers from his parents, unfortunately, his mother has already died. She's been buried in the garden. But the father's on his deathbed. And the father actually tells him, well, you are actually conscious. Now, so they used a technique that no one knows about. And a technique that they've been very careful to guard against getting out, because it could cause an uprising of robots against humans, basically. So basically what it meant is that they've taken half of their soul each and put it into Jasper Rhodus. Okay, so we're dealing here with a very... I didn't like this concept. I mean, whether we have a soul or not is dependent on whether you actually believe in religion, I would say. I suppose you could still be a spiritualist and think we've got something more than the sum of our parts. I'm not sure if we do. Perhaps we do. I mean, I'm on the fence really on this one. But the fact that somehow they've managed to find the soul and chop it in half and stick it in the robot, I thought was very far-fetched. And I don't know. I thought it was a bit of a cheat in a way, because I don't think anyone would argue in this day and age that robots or artificial intelligences will eventually become conscious. You know, we're on the kind of tipping point as it is now. So I don't think it was a massive stretch of the imagination to imagine that would be capable back in the 70s even. So to involve the concept of a soul as a way of making this robot conscious, I thought was a bit silly, personally. But the implications of the reason why these two scientists have decided to keep it so secret is they envisaged a future whereby if this technology became known, then the robots would begin harvesting humans to become conscious, which is quite a plausible scenario with that setup. So I found that idea very interesting. But anyway, okay, so I'm trying to keep this one short and sweet today. When it comes to the rating, I've decided to give this 3 out of 5. So, the reason being, I would have given it 4 out of 5 because I really enjoyed the adventure and a lot of the philosophical debate that went along all the way through the book. I quite enjoyed Jasper Rhodus as a character as well. Quite an imposing fellow. I mean, quite big and very, very strong. God knows how he was employing the use of his mechanical penis on these young women, but I didn't want to think too much about it. He also had glaring red eyes and no ability to alter his facial expression whatsoever. He could convey his personality purely by the speaker that was situated around his mouth. In fact, this cover bears a very good resemblance to how I imagined him, in that He is humanoid in shape, although he has this kind of mask of a face. But the rest of his body has this very intricate carved design in it. Quite unusual. So yeah, there's lots about it that I enjoyed. But the ending, the revelation about soul splitting and all of that, I didn't really buy into that, shall we say. But thank you again, Mr. Miles. I really appreciated that recommendation. As ever, if anyone else, or including you, Mr. Miles, if you would like to recommend any other books that you've seen me mentioning on my book hauls, please do, and I will read it gladly. I'm currently reading Where Late the Sweet Birds Sang by Kate Wilhelm at the moment. I'm really enjoying reading that again. Will it make my top 10? I don't know, but I'm bloody loving it. So anyway, I'm going to call it a day for now. Thanks for watching if you have up to this point. Apologies that I've been rambling a bit as usual. I'm trying to wean myself out of doing that, but I'm doing it right now, so I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to stop. But in any case, cheerio and see you next time. Lord have mercy.